I can't believe red vines actually exist. They are so bad. But apparently, some people, like my otherwise wonderful husband, think the very same thing about my beloved Twizzlers. It turns out basically everyone has a weirdly strong preference when it comes to red licorice. I'm about to go to great lengths, maybe ridiculous lengths, to figure out what's going on here and which red licorice really reigns supreme. This is Minute Food. First things first, red licorice isn't actually licorice. Real licorice candy, aka black licorice, has been around for hundreds of years and was traditionally flavored and colored with the root of the licorice plant. Red licorice didn't arrive on the scene until the 1950s when the American Licorice Company decided to use raspberry flavoring and red coloring instead, and market the candy as red vines. Today, though, the flavor of red vines is apparently just, red. A few decades later, another licorice company, which was eventually acquired by Hershey's, started making their own fruit-flavored licorices, one of which was strawberry. This is what we know and love, or hate, as Twizzlers. Hershey's also makes a bunch of spin-offs, but the flagship Twizzlers and Red Vines candies are really the top dogs when it comes to red licorice here in the US. And people have big feelings about them. I mean, some people hate them both, but people who like one are staunchly devoted to that brand. There are tons of forum discussions and articles and videos out there arguing why one is better than the other. Even Parks and Rec reference the rivalry. But nobody has actually looked at this question scientifically. Until now. The Minute Food team put together a survey asking some basic questions about people's red licorice preferences. And more than 900 people were willing to geek out with us. And luckily, our favorite data nerd was willing to sort through the stats. Only about 15% of people that responded to our survey had no preference between the two brands. From the responses, most of them seemed to dislike both options equally. But when we look at those with a preference, way more people chose Twizzlers than Red Vines. So Twizzlers is the better red licorice. Woohoo! Ugh, look, I would love to stop here and tell you that Twizzlers are the quantifiably superior red licorice. But I have to keep going because scientifically, there is something pretty interesting going on here. See, we also asked some other questions in our survey, like which candy people grew up eating. Because there is a ton of evidence that we tend to prefer foods that we're exposed to earlier and more often. Like in one study, kids rated vegetables that they ate more frequently as better tasting than those that they didn't eat frequently, or didn't recognize at all. Another found that the more often adults tasted various types of juices, the better they liked them. And a landmark experiment, one of my all-time favorite studies, found that babies whose mothers drank carrot juice during pregnancy and the first few months after birth, in other words, they were exposed to carrot flavor in utero and via breast milk, liked carrot-flavored cereal better at 6 months old than babies whose mothers didn't drink carrot juice. So there's reason to believe that people who grew up eating red vines might prefer red vines later in life. And the same for those that grew up eating Twizzlers. And that's exactly what we saw in the data. The red licorice brand you grew up eating is an incredibly strong predictor of which one you like now. Out of the 900 plus respondents, only 33 people grew up eating one candy and now prefer the other. So because I grew up in a Twizzlers family, I was basically predestined to like Twizzlers. Same with my husband and Red Vines. But my Twizzlers loving family is based on the East Coast, whereas my husband's Red Vine family is on the West Coast. So I also wanted to know whether geography matters here. So we classified each state as either a Twizzler state or a Red Vine state based on data from the survey about brand availability, so which candy or candies people remember being available where they grew up, and popularity, which brand people preferred most in each state. And this is what we ended up with. It lines up pretty darn well with this other survey I came across showing which brand wins each state's Instacart sales. And it also makes sense when we look at where these candies are made. Red Vines have always been produced in the San Francisco Bay Area. Twizzlers, on the other hand, have always been made in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. For a while, they were also produced in New Mexico, although that plant was relocated to Memphis in the late 90s. So each red licorice brand has kind of carved out its own territory. And the data shows that if you grew up in Twizzlers territory, your family was more likely to eat Twizzlers. And remember, if you grew up eating Twizzlers, you're much more likely to prefer them now. If you grew up in the Red Vine belt, you probably grew up eating those, and you're much more likely to prefer them today. So scientifically, which brand is better? whichever one ruled the state you grew up in. But this doesn't explain why people seem to absolutely hate the other brand. In our survey, more than 40% of people rated the strength of their preference as a 5 out of 5, the highest strength possible. And when we asked people to describe the one they didn't like, they didn't hold back. To Twizzlers lovers, red vines taste like
vomit-flavored rubber.
Red vines taste like Madame Tussauds.
They taste like the lost dreams of the elderly.
Poetic and accurate. Twizzlers, on the other hand,
are literally made from the same plastic used to coat electrical cords on appliances.
The texture is like a tire masquerading as a candy with a facade of strawberry.
And the taste is like
someone had a mental breakdown in a Florida gas station.
I mean, if you've never had a mental breakdown in a Florida gas station, are you really living life? But seriously, what is with the hate? Because red vines and Twizzlers aren't all that different. They're both fruity, twisty, and as a lot of people mention, no matter which side they're on, plasticky and artificial. In other words, red vines and Twizzlers seem similar enough that if you're trying the one you didn't grow up eating, you probably expect that it's gonna be what you're used to. But the two products are just different enough that you don't get what you expect. And research has shown that we don't tend to like things, especially foods, that defy our expectations. Two of my favorite comments got at this idea.
Twizzlers are like red vines, but with no redeeming qualities.
And
red vines taste like someone tries to recreate a Twizzler from memory while having dementia and COVID at the same time.
For most of us, Twizzlers and red vines seem to fall into an uncanny valley. An uncandy valley, if you will, where they're just different enough from our expectations to cause utter revulsion. So we now know that if you grew up with one of these candies, you're probably not going to like the other one. But what if you didn't grow up with either? Could people who have never tasted either one help us determine which one is better? We were already really deep into this whole ridiculous question, and I wasn't going to stop here. So I sent Twizzlers and red vines to friends in 3 countries, India, Spain, and Brazil, where these brands aren't common, and we had people taste each one. The first takeaway? There is a lot of red tape involved in sending candy around the world. But eventually, all the packages completed their journeys. And after 40 people tasted each brand, it was basically a tie. Although honestly, nobody liked either one all that much. So while one answer to the Twizzlers versus red vines rivalry is that whichever brand you grew up eating is the better licorice, and therefore both of these groups are right, another way to look at it is that neither one is actually any good. And these people had the right idea all along. And that was a twist I didn't see coming. This is the actual end of the video, I promise. But I just want to say that a lot of people came together to help answer this question that I've been thinking about for literally years. Our survey participants, our international taste testers, and our incredible patrons. Thank you all for finally making this long, twisty explanation a reality.